Hello, welcome back to the Master of None podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Murphy. As always, thank you very much for joining us here on a pretty wet and miserable night in Galway. But my guest here tonight is not experiencing such weather. He is in Houston currently. It is Paul Mullen, the man, the myth, the legend. Paul, thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
Not too bad, Steve. Thanks very much. That was a massive intro. But yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's Paul. Obviously, is well known at the moment after a recent documentary came out there. Pretty big headed of you, Paul, to have a documentary made, but we'll get into that later on. Documentary on your life, basically growing up, obviously Inis Mor in Galway, and then going on to play for the United States rugby team, the Eagles as they're known, and quite the journey on the way, Paul. Which is why I love your story, and the same reason I loved chatting to Tig Leader, who I know it's a mate of yours. It's the road that not many people take, and that's the interesting ones. It's not the lads who stay at Connacht their whole lives and play with Ireland like that. That's a boring kind of path. Yours is far from that. So I'm very glad you come on the chat, and we'll kind of start that. And you're growing up in Inishmore. Can you describe what that's like for someone who isn't familiar with that kind of lifestyle?
I suppose I'll give it a shot anyway. I mean, when I come over here, and somebody asks me, where are you from, and I tell them, it's a small island off the coast of Ireland. It's 9 miles long, 3 miles wide, and population of 800 people. And they look at you as like, geez, that's some difference to to living in the city of Houston here, where there's a few million people. But to me, it's normal, so I wouldn't really know any different if you will, So I mean, growing up as a child, I think it's actually, and I suppose it probably sounds if I'm biased, but I couldn't have imagined a better childhood because, if you want, so much freedom. Do you know what I mean? If you cycle to school, you cycle to football training. If you want to go fishing, you cycle fishing, to swimming at the pier, you kayaking. And to me, that was just like, there's so much freedom. You can do whatever you want. And so I must say, I think growing up on the island was absolutely fantastic. Granted, when I was 18, 19, yeah, there's definitely an urge like, Jesus, there has to be a bit more to life than 9 miles by 3 miles. Do you know what I mean? So so that's kind of when I suppose, obviously, things got different by when it was I head off to the States. But in terms of a place to grow up on the island, I couldn't imagine a better childhood. Do you know what I mean? It's a fantastic spot.
And I doubt the concept of celebrity exists on an island like that, but are you as close as it gets when you go back home?
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't think at all. No. There's no such thing as I'm definitely not a celebrity anyway. That's one thing for sure. Yeah. No, not at all.
And when you're growing up on an island like that, like, is there rugby on Inishmore? Are you playing growing up, or was it something you only got to later in your life?
Well, that's it. Yeah. So there's no rugby on the island. I mean, the only kind of team sport I played growing up was Gaelic football, and I suppose I'm probably. I feel like I have 2 left feet. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't any good at it. But it was only when I went to boarding school in Limerick in Glenstall, that's when I was really first introduced to rugby. And and it just kind of, I suppose you could say, it went from there, under 13s, and I've often said it's kind of sink or swim, and you're thrown in there, you catch the ball. You've been doing these drills, like, and sure, I had a clue. I did, I knew I knew how to pass the ball, but I didn't know anything about it. I remember they stuck me in a prop, and sure, I was used to Gaelic football. I was out the wing there because I was seeing a bit of space out there, but I had no idea what was, what my job was, if you will. So, so Glenstall was when I was first introduced to rugby, anyway, yeah. So kind of a long answer to a short question, yeah.
Yeah, and did you have an interest in rugby before that, or was it even on your radar when you were growing up, or was it only lately when you got to Glenstall that you were like, oh, look at this is a cool sport?
Yeah, no, that was it, yeah. I mean, it wasn't really on my radar at all. I mean, just, I suppose, when, again, growing up on the island, you'd be kept busy in the summer, even as a kid, with just, there'd be swimming lessons to be on, and I think every kind of kid done that up to whatever age you were, until the sports kind of, for me, rugby kind of took off at about, 17, I suppose, when the Munster, going up and down to Munster. So that thing, once kind of that kicked off, I was, I suppose it's almost like a job, really, because you're just, so it would have been 18 now. You're just kind of gone the whole time. But I loved every second of it. Do you know what I mean? I would never kind of, I suppose when I said job, it never felt like work, because the dream was always to play for Munster, represent Munster, and it just, the distance wasn't going to get in my way, if you will. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The dream was to play for Munster. So obviously, being a Galway man, was Connacht the initial dream, or did that ever like come into your mind, or was it soon you got to Limerick sort of, and like obviously being in Limerick, it's obviously a big Munster town, so I can see how that can rub off on people. But was Connacht ever on the radar?
Um, well, so I suppose like nowadays, like and I don't want to sound bad by saying this, but back in the day when I was first introduced to rugby, the Connacht team weren't exactly, they were nowhere near as competitive as they are now. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Now they're a serious, they're a serious team. But back then it's just, again, it's probably because I hadn't a clue about rugby. And then all of a sudden, you ended up going to a few of the games in Thomond Park, and I mean, like, this is unbelievable. You know what I mean? And I just like, I fell in love. I suppose you could say, fell in love with Munster straight away. And that's not, when I talk about Connacht, from Connacht, there's probably no, disrespect to Connacht. It's just because like,
Mm.
this was something that I don't know how I never experienced before, but straight away I was like, this is unbelievable. And even there a few years ago, it's like when I went back, my girlfriend went back with me we went back to Ireland for Christmas, and Christmas on the island is a very special time. I suppose maybe it's probably because it's the ferry stops for about 2 days or so, and the shop is closed for Christmas Day and the day after. So it's the only time of the year where the island is actually, you could say, I don't say lockdown because COVID has obviously brought a new meaning to lockdown,
Yeah.
but no, we went back and we went to Munster Leinster in Thomond Park, and I was just like, you have to experience this, and she thought it was pretty special too, which is good for me, I suppose. But yeah, and I suppose that's kind of how I ended up, maybe by going to school in Munster and just going to a few of the games. I suppose maybe that's kind of probably why I fell in love with Munster. I don't say Connacht was never on the radar. I suppose Connacht really kind of came into the picture around the under-20s when the coach was kind of reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in going there. But you could say the damage was done at that stage because there was only one jersey I wanted, and it was a red one.
Okay. Yeah, Munster's definitely one of those clubs, isn't it? It's a bit like, I always compare it to Liverpool, as in, like, I'm not a soccer fan really, but you always see those European games in Liverpool and Anfield, and the atmosphere always just looks electric. And Munster and Thomond Park seems to have that aura about it as well. Especially in European games. But your time in Glenstal, did you take the rugby quite quickly, or was it a steep learning curve?
Oh, it's a steep learning curve, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, sure. I hadn't a clue what I was at. Like, I hadn't a clue, but after a while, I think, yeah, I suppose after a while, I think, did we lose every game in first year? Like, I think we went a lot every game. And I remember the time the second years were just making, like, just laughing. I said, geez, you're absolutely shite. I think maybe towards the end we might have turned it around a little. I can't remember now, but first year wasn't a great year for us anyway in terms of rugby. But the second year, then we done a lot better. I remember that for sure. But it was a steep learning curve, but it was learning curve, I suppose. But I just loved it. Um, I think what I missed about the GAA was the game of football, just the physicality aspect of it. Or maybe that's what I loved about rugby, is like you can actually, Gaelic football, you can't really hit somebody as hard as you can because, if the shoulder goes the wrong place, you know what I mean, all of a sudden it's a yellow card or whatever it
Yeah.
is. While rugby is like, if you're not hitting them as hard as you can, you're wasting your time. And geez, I absolutely loved it. And to this day, I enjoy it. You know what I mean? I mean, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't be doing it. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true. Obviously, yeah, you get on well and you play at Munster underage and Ireland underage. What was that like as a young lad at that stage, being involved in those kind of academies and underage programs? Was that obviously in the head? You're like, okay, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, or was it still just sort of a bit of crack?
Uh, it was definitely a thing. I mean, I suppose this kind of thing is, again, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have done it. And I loved it. Do you know what I mean? I suppose the thing was, kind of like what Ty Leader said in his podcast, uh, like the goal for me was, I mean, to pull on the red jersey. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, like the dream would be to play at the time was to play for Munster in Thomond Park. I mean, and I think that's probably any kid's dream in Limerick. Do you know what I mean? That's was playing rugby. That. I mean, I think a lot of people have that dream, and I suppose you could say the pathway to get to that was to play the underage setup. You know what I mean? And that's at the time, let's say playing if it was under 19, that's the closest thing you can get to it. And then the next year, well, it's under 20, and then it might be sub academy, and then then it's probably time to, to play for the senior team. But I mean, my path just went a different way after the 20s,
Yeah, so we'll get on to that. So obviously, you didn't take that path. Your parents sort of sat you down, didn't they? And they gave you a bit of advice. Do you want to explain what that advice was?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I suppose we're I suppose any kid, and maybe when I was when I was in Glenstall, I probably thought I was, I mean, I don't know, you're a teenager, you probably think, okay, this is what life's about. I might have an idea what I'm at. But when I was in Glenstall in fifth year, the summer of fifth year, so I was training with Munster under-19s the whole summer, and next thing we came back from a tour in England, and I came in on the ferry there, and next thing they sat me down. I knew there was something wrong, just the way they were kind of acting. I knew there's something's not right, and they said, yeah, you're not going back to Glenstall, and I was like, what do you mean? So I was like, I was playing for Munster schools, and Glenstall was a Munster school. And then they're saying, yeah, you're not focusing enough on your academics. You're only focusing on rugby. I was like, well, geez, sure. If you told me that now, I probably would have focused a bit harder. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I knew this was the if this outcome was was an option, and I mean that's all they kind of had to tell me. But the damage was done. And I don't know was how results came back around that time or what. But anyway, I was off to King's Hospital in Limerick, in King's Hospital in Dublin. So and it caused a bit of havoc, because I ended up playing for Munster schools while in the Leinster schools. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
And that was a disaster, yeah. So what was your question again? Sorry, it was something about.
Well, yeah, I basically was asking about your parents' decision to basically say, like, I think what the
Oh
quote
yeah,
was, you're only one broken bone away from losing it all.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. So I played the Munster 20s. Loved every minute because at that time there it kind of gets a bit more important. Not more important, but more of a commitment where you're kind of gone Monday through Friday. I was down in Limerick, and then you go home at the weekends and help out at the weekend. While the under-19s was only maybe 3 or 4 days, maybe 3 days a week. And next thing into the 20s came around, and it was like, well, listen, they wanted me to focus on, as I said, you're only one injury away from your rugby career being finished. So you get a degree first. So I was, I suppose this wasn't towards the end of the 20 season. This is probably maybe earlier on, like, because we done the leaving cert. And I was looking at doing the kind of marine engineering or something like that in either, some sort of engineering in UL or down in Cork. And just, I suppose realistically what was going to happen was I was going to end up playing rugby, in some shape or form in Ireland, and wasn't really going to focus on college. So, but that was, I suppose you could say that was put into fairly fast when I headed over to Texas, Texas A&M. So just down the road here. I'm in Houston at the moment, but Galveston is about an hour south. And I suppose you could say don't say similar to home, but Galveston is an island as well, a bit bigger than Inis Mor, but it's, I suppose it's an island all the same. And a lot of, let's say, maritime, listen, it's in the Gulf of Mexico, and the Gulf of Mexico, as anybody knows, is full of oil. So, or was, I suppose. Yeah, but anyway, so I came over here to study marine engineering. So I got my degree in marine engineering, finished in 2015, and got a master's then. And I suppose I was quite lucky there when at the time the MLR, the Major League Rugby, was just kicking off. And Fitzy, the coach, he reached out to me. He was like, hey, listen, would you be interested in coming up for an old trial or something like that? And I was like, I really want to. But I was stuck because I was trying to finish my master's thesis. And it was absolutely killing me because it was just going on and on and on. And I was just like, the longer it went on, I kind of felt like my chance to play rugby was kind of like getting smaller and smaller because, listen, they have a season that's going to kick off. And here's me, trying to finish my thesis. But eventually I got it over the line anyway. And got picked up by the Houston Sabercats, yeah.
Yeah. And can I ask, whose decision was it to go to Texas A&M? Was that yours or your parents?
Oh, which wasn't mine anyway. Yeah, no, it wasn't mine. Because I mean, again, I suppose you could say I was, the thinking would be to stay in Ireland to kind of play rugby, but get your degree.
Right.
But I think, what a lot of lads are saying, that it was quite difficult to to get, let's say, something like engineering, they say it's quite time consuming. So to get a degree and to be, let's say, playing rugby, it just wouldn't be, it'd be very difficult. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. So I kind of, once I came over here, then I was playing Division 3, just like Ty again. Yeah, I was playing Division 3 rugby in Galveston. So again, it wouldn't be the most competitive stuff, but it was we had a great time. We had a great time. Yeah, and listen, again, the standard rugby wasn't fantastic, but made some great friends, and this was won a few games too, like.
And what was so when you move over to Texas or into Houston or Galveston, is that a culture shock for you at the time? Obviously, you're only a young lad, and coming from Inis Mor and even Limerick, it's not quite Texas. So how was your settling in period?
Yeah, there'd be certain things where it's just I remember, like, when I first came over, like, there'd be certain, let's say when you ask, how'd you like, they'd ask you how would you want your eggs cooked, and I'm like. Like, do you know what I mean? You'd never hear, yeah. But you have the sunny side up, you have the over
Yeah.
easy, you have scrambled, you have poached, I was like, it's almost like, even though it's the English language, it's almost a different language because there's so many different things over here. But I mean, you kind of get used to it fairly fast. I know the lads on the rugby team used to make awful fun of me because of, the way the Irish say three.
Yeah.
I'd probably say it a bit like, is it 3 threes or 3 trees? And geez, even to this day, like, they'd be still making fun of it. Our TH is the way we pronounce our TH. No, I suppose it was a culture shock, but sure, like everything else, you get the hang of it fairly fast, or kind of sink or swim. Do you know what I mean? I could have,
Yeah.
if I wanted the easy option to go back, but sure, listen, it's English speaking. There's a decent Irish community here in Houston now, so it's I don't know, it's grand.
And did you have connections over there before you come over? Did your family or
In Boston, yeah. So
in
I have
Boston? Okay.
well, actually, so my granddad was born in Boston, and I have a lot of my uncles up in Boston. I have a lot of cousins in Boston, but I think I told one of the lads, was it Jack Murray? He's in the car when we were at Munster training. And he goes, yeah, I have a cousin up in Boston, and he's like, Paul, you do realize that that's like Boston to Texas is almost like having a cousin in Spain and in Ireland, like, you know what I mean? I was like, geez, it's it's a valid point. I mean, the
Yeah.
country's massive, and it's you only really get to see how big it is when you're flying across it. Looking on the map is really no good to you.
No.
But yeah, no. So I was kind of I'd no family here in let's say Texas anyway. But sure, you just go to college. Maybe it'd be almost like going to college in Edinburgh or something like that. You know what I mean? Out of the
Yeah.
country, nobody's gonna have contacts, but sure, you figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And you played a bit of Gaelic over in Houston as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I tried. I suppose you could say it's more of a case to get to know the lads, really.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's probably why most people. I mean, if you're playing, you don't come over to to America to play. Well, for the most part, you don't go over to America to play Gaelic football at a higher level, like.
Yeah.
So it's nice to get to know the lads and have something in common too.
And you also did a bit of refereeing, or you did a course to become a referee.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
What
Yeah.
what made you want to do that?
I suppose what made me want to do that. I suppose I go two ways here, but I suppose I might as well tell you the truth.
Truth's always good, Paul.
The truth. I was, I so we're playing Division 3 rugby, and I was getting fierce. Frustrated. And I got a few yellow cards, very few too many. So I got a few too many yellow cards, and basically I got some sort of it was a ban, and was it a 5-game ban in a 10-game season? I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous.
Did you murder someone, or was it
No,
just?
no. Just a few, and I wouldn't have got any cards playing at home. It's just, I suppose, I was getting frustrated. Some of these, I don't say some of the calls were terrible, because you could say the referee's always right. At least that's what I've learned now from the referee course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But at the time, I was just, listen. Anyway, so I got the course. I got the I done this thing there, and then my ban was wiped. So and after that, then I expressed a bit of interest in it too. Just to because I mean, you help out grow the game too. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like they probably have a shortage of referees in Texas. At least they definitely did, you know. But it's it's not an easy job. I mean, it's not an easy job at all. But I think what it helped me because you get to learn the rules a bit better too. Do you know what I mean? You know, when you're watching the game, then you might see, you know, you might be watching from where the referee is positioning himself, and you know, the calls and that kind of stuff and signals. So yeah, that's why I became a referee. But then actually, I suppose in a way, I think it probably stuck to my advantage because I remember going to a few of the referee meetings, and I'd even be asking the referees, let's say when they're being up against the Sabercats, so like, what are you looking for? I said, so what's funny actually is, so I'd be a prop, and I would think I know, you know, I'd know fairly well what's going on in the scrum. But when it comes for me to be refereeing the scrum, Jesus, tell it, it's night and day. It's tough, like, do you know what I mean? So I said, I was there to Scott Green at the time, and I was like, Scott was like, listen, I'm a what you call it? I'm a prop, you know what I mean? So and I feel like I know what's going on in the scrum, but when it comes to refereeing, I haven't a clue. So just yeah. So he was kind of saying, oh well, will you be looking for this and this and this, and then the way I kind of, I suppose, I don't say manipulated, but now it's like when the referees are refereeing me, in the back of my head, I know what they're looking for.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So you want to paint the best picture to make sure that I'm not the one that's getting penalised. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because I think we all know watching scrums on TV, sometimes we think the referee is just guessing, but I'm sure there is more to it than that. But did it change your outlook when it comes to actually, you know, not arguing referees, but did it give you more sympathy for the refs, or did it actually make you more frustrated then when decisions went against you?
Which is I wouldn't argue with a ref now. I suppose again, it's, you know, you're trying to paint the picture as best you can. He has a tough job as it is, and I'm just trying my best to paint the best picture. So I suppose if the decision goes against me, well, you're probably thinking maybe I could have made it look a bit better. Do you know what I mean? Trying just as long as my, you know, your knees don't hit the ground kind of first or something like that. You know, make it look like he folded. So so yeah, I mean, it's not easy nowadays. I suppose the way you can, when you're coming up against other props, you can probably kind of have an idea of what they're going to do. Do you mean, or what, or at least nowadays, you know, you'd know what they do. So if they're going to bore in hard or what, you know, it's not like when I first started off, sure, those didn't know what you're at really, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll move on to sort of your international, because you played with the USA on the 20s, didn't you, Paul?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so because my granddad was born in America, I was eligible to play for them. Yeah.
But that must have happened pretty much as soon as you went over, did it, or at least within a year?
Yeah. When I came over, then those trials in Birmingham, Alabama, and I didn't think I'd ever been in Alabama. You know, you should always think when you're at home, you know, sweet home Alabama. That's as close to Alabama as you get. You know.
Yeah.
But so went with a trial down there.
And what did the parents think after sending you away not to play rugby, and within a year your rugby trials for USA?
Yeah. I suppose I don't know what they thought actually. Yeah. So I suppose as long as I was getting my degree at the end of the day, you know, yeah, I don't know what they thought. They came out to see us at the Junior World Trophy out in Georgia, down in Tbilisi. But I suppose they're happy enough to. Oh, they're delighted to see me represent America, because they didn't even tell me they're coming. The next thing, we're going in before the game, and next thing they shouted down, and they were up there with the flag. That's quite special actually. Do you know what I mean? Because I didn't think they'd come all the way down to Georgia to see us play. And I think I can't remember who we were playing. Was it Samoa or somebody at the time? But it was it was very special, you know.
Yeah, that sounds an amazing moment. And what are you thinking then at that stage? Because I know you went on to play with the emerging Ireland team as well, didn't you? A bit later.
Oh, so I played Ireland under 19 before before I left for America.
Okay.
Yeah, so I played Ireland under 19, then it was Munster 20s, and then I came to America, and then it was USA under 20.
Right.
And,
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's comparing like your time in even Munster underage and those Irish underage setups? What's the level of professionalism like then when it comes to a USA on the 20 kind of panel? Like, it's obviously America, obviously amazing when it comes to, you know, the NFL and the NBA, but rugby obviously isn't as big a sport over there as it is here. So what's the level of the facilities, the backing, and all that sort of stuff. Comparing them compared to what you've experienced over here.
Yeah, well, I suppose, I mean, now things have changed a lot. When I first came over, it'd be awful hard to even watch a game of rugby. Do you know what I mean? Like, in Ireland, you turn on the TV, if you have 4 channels, there's a chance that rugby could be on it. But now, you come over to America and it's like, so these lads, when we showed up to camp for the USA, it was like a lot of these lads were, let's say, football. They're athletes, but just not rugby athletes. Do you know what I mean? So they be, does that make sense? As in they wouldn't necessarily have the rugby skills. Do you know what I mean? So, but there'd be units like that have great gym scores and everything, and but it might be let's say there'd be big lads. Next thing all of a sudden you go to the scrum. I suppose at the same time I had been playing as prop for 6 years before that, and these lads might have been just kind of recent converts. But no, at the the thing about America is it's so big. So I think one of the big differences, if you look at the Irish team, when we were going to the trials, it was a trials or camp we had for the Irish under-19 team. We met in was it Enfield? Is that is a Mead or somebody, so that kind of And anyway, so if you look at anybody there, whoever took the longest, I mean, I would have taken me the longest to get there because I had to take a boat and a bus and another bus, whatever. But outside of that, there's lads coming in from London. They could have been in within, let's say, 5 hours. So if they would have left that morning and been there. So if you say 5 hours for a drive or whatever it is, that could cover the whole of Ireland. I don't know if I'm making sense now. If I'm not, I'll just stop. But but 5 hours in America. If I drive 5 hours here in Texas, I'm still in Texas.
Oh yeah, not even close to leaving it.
Yeah. So if I fly for 5 hours, I'd be in Boston. Do you know what I mean? So it just shows you how big the country is, and then the cost of having to get that. If you're to put a player to drive from Cork to Dublin, it takes it's only a few hours, but the cost is so cheap. While flights over here they're not cheap, So I think that's why, and maybe that's why USA Rugby had difficulty there with they just went through the bankruptcy, because it's not cheap to bring players from all over the world into one camp. But I suppose that's just the lay of the land. That's the way it is.
And has it progressed in your years over there? Has it taken massive steps?
Oh, big time, big time, yeah, big time, yeah. It's it has indeed, and especially now with the MLR. I mean, people people watch rugby. Is it on ESPN and stuff? So it's easier to watch. So people start to get people get into it.
Yeah, that's great. And then obviously you do well with the under-20s, obviously, because you get the call up for the Eagles. And can you talk us through that kind of moment? When did you actually hear how it felt? What did it mean to you?
Yeah, well, so I done the under-20s, and then I just went to college. So I suppose the under-20s was really the USA under-20s. That was the last time I played a decent standard of let's say rugby, if you will. And then I went to college, and I just head in the books for years, and it was just I enjoyed the degree, if that makes sense, as in I enjoyed what I was learning about. But at the same time, it's just I just want to be out playing rugby. Do you know what I mean? So once I got the degree, then went up to Fitzy with the Sabercats for a few trials, a few training sessions, and got involved with them, and played a few games. Was the whatever it was the pre-MLR, if you will, so pre-season games, I suppose you call them. And then when the USA manager kind of called me, and because at the time I would have needed like a P1 professional athlete visa to be able to play for the team, and anyhow, one day the USA manager reached out to me, and he was like, "Hi, yeah, what's the story? I believe you're eligible to play for America. How would you qualify?" kind of thing. And I was like, "Yeah, well, I should qualify in 2 sides, as in my granddad was born here first of all, so I played USA under-20, and I think straight away that was good enough for them. But also because of I've been here, it was 7 or 8 years at the time, so I would have qualified through the residency aspect as well. But the grandfather thing was good enough for me. So yeah, then I think there was a time where we got an email to kind of say, listen, the squad is going to be announced for the June tests on such and such a day. I can't remember whenever it was. And next thing, so I told the parents, as I listened, I should hear around this time. And next thing is we came back after training. It was late at 11 o'clock, and 11 o'clock my time, so it'll be 6 hours ahead over there. And next thing, seeing the email come in, it's like, yeah, you've been invited to the June camp. So I mean, the parents told me to call them up, and I said, okay, well, I mean, it's whatever time. What's that? 5 o'clock in the morning. Called them up, and they're absolutely delighted, you know. So as was I. Do you know what I mean? I was absolutely delighted to get the call even into camp. I mean, getting the call into camp doesn't really mean anything. It just means there's a lot of work ahead of you. So yeah, no, and kind of went from there.
Yeah, it's incredible, and then we'll get to the MLR in a bit. But you obviously then ended up playing Ireland in Dublin in 2018 with America. I just want to, like, what's your headspace going into that? Like, are you kind of pissed off at like are you kind of saying like this could be me, or are you just like, what's your kind of mindset going into that game?
It's a good question, really. I mean, I hadn't been home. That was the first time. So that was 2018. It was November 2018. When I left in November 2010, and I hadn't been back. So my first time back in Ireland was to play Ireland, which was quite special. Do you know what I mean? So that's quite special, and I just I know I was other things, you know, as in I was going off to play. I'd be playing against the likes of, you know, like Scannell. So Niall Scannell, he was my hooker when I played Munster under 20s, and was the under 19s as well. So it's basically I would have known him. Do you know what I mean? And there's a few lads I would have played, you know, let's say if it wasn't, would have played against growing up, or even with Ireland under 19. So it was. I mean, listen, it's professional rugby. I mean, it doesn't matter what team it is that you're playing. It's not really. I know it's Ireland. You know, it was quite special, but you're trying to just. I was just trying to focus on just nailing my job, just do my job as best I can, and then, you know, we'll enjoy it afterwards. But you know, it wasn't over until the final whistle, if that makes any sense. And I know that kind of sounds like the typical, maybe the stereotypical answer you might get from somebody, but that's just I mean, that's just how it was, you know. I mean, afterwards it was great to see like friends and lads I hadn't seen for years, literally years. Yeah, so it was great to see them, and it was quite nice. So, you know, for the first time to see them was in Aviva Stadium. You know, I mean, I never would have thought I'd ever be playing there again. So yeah, I mean, as before, when we done the Aviva what was it, Aviva Stadium opening game, we played there, and we got our asses handed to us, like. But I didn't think I'd be going back to play there again. And next thing, you know, 8 years later, we're playing Ireland there, and I was representing the USA. So it's quite special, like.
What was the scrums like? Were they extra a bit of bite to them, or was it was just, as you said, normal day at the office?
I mean, I think at least I don't know. I haven't had an easy day at the office yet, you know. So yeah, no, it was, you know, you're trying to give it everything. You know what I mean? So I suppose, you know, at the time Ireland were they ranked number 1, they'd just beaten the All Blacks. Do you know what I mean? So I mean, rugby in Ireland, I don't say it was at an all-time high, because, you know, but it was. Yeah. Everybody was watching it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I remember, you know, we watched the game. Ireland played the All Blacks for a while. We're in Romania, and it was just. You know what I mean? I don't say this is a team, you know, obviously some of the players were different when we played them the following week, but it was, do you know what I mean? It was special, like, you know.
There was a great buzz around the team.
Oh, there's a great buzz even around Ireland because of rugby, you know. And I mean, even when we landed in Ireland, like the hotel and everything, like everything was just fantastic, you know, because the previous week we were in Romania, and yeah, it was Romania. Like, you know, it wasn't wouldn't be on my bucket list of places to go back to in any hurry, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We'll move on to the MLR, because I think it's pretty cool that America now has a sort of a league, and it's great for obviously rugby over there. And as you said before, you signed for the Houston SaberCats in 2018, which is a great name off the bat. I don't even know what a SaberCat is, but I'm sure it's pretty cool. How big do you know yourself what a SaberCat is?
I don't. It's a mythical creature or something, but yeah, it's some sort of a cat. I know that's,
yeah, I assume so. Yeah,
like I don't know, some sort of tiger lion or
Like a
something like
saber
that. Yeah.
tooth, possibly along the lines of that.
Yes, yeah. And again, now I wouldn't be. I don't know if it was an animal, now it would be all right, but because I would be able to relate to it. But your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, yeah.
yeah. But at the time, like, is rugby big in Houston? Is there much of a fan base when you join? Like at your games, is there big crowds? What is it kind of like at that stage of the MLR?
So where were we? Yeah, so we're at the time we were playing down in where were we? Where was the season? Jeez, go back a while now. I know at first we were playing in what was it called? It was like a baseball stadium down in Sugarland there, and that was kind of for the preseason. It was great. Like, just it was, because you could say professional rugby was brought to Houston, or it was in Houston. You had all the teams coming to support the Sabercats. Like, it was just. Listen, it was a great night out in a way, because like there's fireworks there. One of the sayings they say over here in Texas, everything's bigger and better in
Yeah,
Texas. And when you went to that, I was like, this is just. I remember when I went to the first game, and the lads, the team played. I can't remember who they played now, whoever it was. And next thing afterwards, like there's a fireworks. And it's just like, growing up in Ireland, you wouldn't see too many fireworks, but this was just like, this was phenomenal. And I was like, geez, I want to be part of this, because you could kind of tell, like, whoever's involved here, they're not in here for just in for the sake of it. They're in for the long run, So yeah, so I got involved in it. Geez, I loved it. But so what was, sorry, went off topic again somehow. You're
yeah.
talking
Right.
about what was it? How do we get on playing? Wasn't it, or something like that? Where were we
Yeah,
playing?
so how, like,
Oh,
how
the
it
fans.
was. Yeah, is there a big supporter fan base? Is it a lot of still of Irish? You said there's a big Irish community there. Is a lot of those kind of people, or is it genuine? I don't know what the term for people who live in Houston is. Houstonans. I don't know what the term is, but
Houstonians, yeah, Houstonians, yeah,
Houstonians. Yeah.
yeah. No, geez, it was, yeah, it was. I think what happened really was just, it was I might play rugby, right, and then so I'd bring say, hey, listen, I'm going to a rugby game. Hey, come on with me, and that's kind of so if you have all these little clubs around Houston that play rugby now, and each person might bring a friend, or even just the clubs who go to the game, with their teammates. You know what I mean? So it was great. Like, and the wives and girlfriends, the whole lot, like, and kids, the whole lot. So and when you had the fireworks at the end of the night too, it was a great night out kind of thing.
Yeah, that sounds
Uh,
pretty. I wish, I don't know, it'd be cool to kind of see that over here, but a bit more of a show, a bit more of a razzle dazzle, as I say.
yeah, there's one game there, like, you see that, like, this was just, it kind of blew my mind. You know what I mean? Because I had never seen anything like it before, and this was just one of the preseason games. This when like you see in the Super Bowl, was when the ball got delivered. This
Oh yeah,
helicopter came in, landed. Do you know what I mean? Gave the referee the ball. I think it was I don't know if it was the Coast Guard or some sort of helicopter anyway. And the crowd's going mad, like. Do you know what I mean? And unfortunately, I actually didn't I only got to see the video of it, because we're inside in the changing rooms getting ready to put the jerseys on. And I just thought this was just mad. Do you know what I mean? It's a great show. Do you know what I mean? It
yeah,
is a great show. So it's so then, and even like the Sabercats went on to build a stadium, like their own stadium. So it's the first kind of purposely built rugby stadium in America. So that's down the road there now. I think there's a few more stages to go on it, like, but it seats a few thousand people. So it's, when they do something like that, when they put in the infrastructure like that, they're not here just for the short term. They're here to stay. So which is great to see.
yeah. I agree totally. Like this podcast, Paul, is not only a rugby podcast. I'm a big NBA basketball fan, and I was sad to read that you missed out an opportunity to meet the Rockets. Is that the Houston Rockets? Is that true?
Geez, I might, yeah. So I my Rockets singlet inside there. Chris Paul, he used to play for
Yeah.
the Rockets, and so obviously his last name was Paul, and then his number was 3. Well, I'd be tighter props, I'd be number 3, and then, so I had a singlet with Paul and number 3 in the back. I said, Chris Paul, he's my man.
Yeah.
But no, when we were out in Japan, wasn't the Rockets out there, and yeah, somehow the few lads went in to kind of meet the Rockets and stuff. Sure, geez, I had my singlet with me and everything, and if I'd known they're going in, I would have, I don't know, managed to wiggle my way in there somehow, but just don't know. Kind of the whole thing just escaped me, But sure, maybe someday I'll meet them.
Yeah. Are you a basketball fan?
Well, my girlfriend played basketball now, so she played college basketball, so she'd know a lot more basketball than I would. my basketball fan, pretty hop on the bandwagon kind of thing, So yeah.
Yeah, Houston have been a good team the last couple of years, so it was a good bandwagon to hop on for a while if you were going to hop on
it. That's it. Yeah. And then I suppose you could say the owner, then your man that bought out the Rockets there. He'd be very involved in Galveston, so he's a load of hotels, and so he'd be a big fan in Galveston. So it's just it's any kind of sports show. I went to my first NFL game there the other day. It was the Texans game. I mean, it was just, even though like the stadium's only at 20% capacity, I really enjoyed it. Like, I know sometimes, like, let's say watching a game on TV is how'd you put it? Sometimes, like, because the different camera angles be great, but like a football game is usually, it takes forever because there's so many commercials. At least over here, there's a commercial break and a play and commercial break. But when you're at the game, I really enjoyed it because there's always something to be looking at. Do you know what I mean? Even like when the play is stopped, it's not a commercial. You're looking at something else, like, So
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I was lucky enough last New Year's, I went to see the Knicks play in Madison Square Garden, and I have to say, it was just like you said, it's just non-stop, like, action from the moment you sit down to the moment the game's over, because they're blaring music all the time. They've got like these people running around shooting T-shirts out of a cannon. Like, it's just absolute. That could be next for the MLO. You never know. That could be the next step.
Yeah.
You signed then. San Diego Legion was your next team then. Well, actually, sorry, you did a bit of an English trip, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah. A small little stint in England. It was over there in Newcastle. Yeah. So right after June internationals, I went over to Newcastle for was it 2 or 3 months there. Yeah.
And how'd you like that? How was that?
Yeah, geez, it was a great experience. Like, it was a great experience just to see how, you could say it's a stepping stone. Do you know what I mean? So you're at the MLR, next thing all of a sudden you're in the Premiership, and it's just it was I loved it. Yeah, loved it. It was a great experience, So it's just, things happened very fast that year, or I suppose even time goes by so fast. But it's just, what it was in January, I was playing with Galveston Division 3, and then, Houston, and then US team, and then before you know it, you're over there playing in the Premiership. It's like, jeez, mad, like.
And was there ever a desire to stay there, or were you always going to come back to the States?
Yeah, I mean, So I'm working on getting my green card, my permanent residency. So the thing with me, rugby is only it's only a job for so long, and I kind of need something after. So that's kind of where I'm looking. Where my parents did push me was to get a degree. And so when I do eventually hang up the boots, that I'll be able to, transfer into something else to just be able to work with. So basically, I don't say I have all my eggs in one basket, but because I'm going to say you kind of do for now anyway, But when I do eventually hang up the rugby boots, I'll be able to use my degree. At least I'd like to think so. So I'm trying to get the green card, and to get that, it's kind of, I suppose, ideal really if I'm in America,
Is the girlfriend American?
She is, yeah. She's American.
Is she using that as leverage over you to, pop the question?
Yeah. So she be off many times. Oh, I'll be much easier if if we're just married and all that kind of crack. And I was like, well, I kind of want to get it myself, and that's just why I don't know why you just want to.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's a tough thing to get. I suppose it's personal goal, but anyway, sure, listen, we'll see what happens, It's,
I'm not trying to get into your personal life.
Yeah,
I thought it was funny.
No, you're grand. No, the election's on at the moment, so who knows how it might go.
Yeah.
Could go anyway. Could go anyway in the next 24 hours, like.
You come back to the States, obviously, signed for San Diego Legion, which, by all accounts, one of the most beautiful parts of the world, San Diego. You're obviously fond of a warm climate these days, going from Houston to San Diego. You've missed out on the rain in Ireland, obviously. But how was that? Obviously, how did that come about? Were you interested in that team beforehand, or was it the day come in looking at you?
Yeah, no, just they reached out there and they kind of, would you be interested in going? I was like, yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, went over there. So it was home. We came back. We're in, which was January. I think January 4th they landed over there, and straight into it. And was it January? So March. I think March was kind of when COVID shut us down, And and kind of, so that was the end of it. You know, it was I was meant to be there for what would be 6 months of the season, whatever it is, you know, and we were only there for about 3. But again, like a beautiful spot, you know. So I suppose you could say, like, if I don't get on rugby, I get to see a bit of the world, you know.
Exactly. And I think,
Yes.
you know, I was looking into your history with San Diego Legion, and the one question that I just kept coming into my mind was, what's Man Nanu like?
Yeah, he's a beast. He's an absolute gentleman too, you know. He's yeah, an absolute gentleman. I mean, you know, sometimes, like, you know, this is one of the lads, like, you know, anybody our age would have grown up, and you'd be looking, you know, you'd be kind of, everybody knows Man Anu. I mean,
Yeah.
anybody that has, you know, that if you know anything about rugby, you know, even over here, it's like, oh no, I'll be up there getting my hair. I mean, I need to get a haircut, but when I was up getting a haircut, then I was like, oh yeah, what's the name of that team, the All Blacks? And I was like, these lads don't know anything about rugby, but they know about the All Blacks. Do you know what I mean? And it's just it's mad, you know. So you know, to be on the same team with Man Anu, like somebody that, you know, you would have watched as a kid, it was just like, you know, it was amazing, you know. So but
What's your
an
first
absolute
encounter
gentleman.
like with him? Is it like, do you go over and introduce yourself? Is he just like,
No, well, my first encounter was one of the lads picked me up from the airport, and he brought me up to kind of show me the office, you know, and I suppose introduced me to the coaches and that kind of crack. And walked in, and next thing you know, he sent us. He's like, Matt, you know, introduced me as just, you know, he just like everybody kind of just introduced himself, you know. He's like, oh man, I was like, fuck, I know who you are, like, you know, it's just
yeah, you don't
I was
have to
going, like,
introduce
you know,
yourself.
yeah, I'm kind of like, fuck, you know, what's the word, you kind of just, I don't say overwhelmed, but you're just like, geez, this lad's you know, a legend, you know. But it was
Yeah,
nice to be on the same team as him, and I tell you that much, for even for
yeah.
just a short period of time.
And what's he like? You know, because obviously going over there, it's obviously a step down for him in regards to what he's been playing most of his life and his caliber. Is there a sense of, like, was he giving it? Like, is he fully obviously professional, but did he buy into the whole thing, or did he give off the impression that he was sort of, you know, third gear coasting, or?
Oh, absolutely not. He was given 100%, and no doubt about it. Like, he was, oh no, as in just, you know, yeah, he's uh, definitely given 100%. I mean, that wouldn't even come into question. But just what I loved was just, like, you know, to be, how'd you put it? Like, let's say if you scored a try or something went wrong, whatever, he'd always be in the middle of the right, lads. We'll just break it down, like, simple. Do you know what I mean? You know, we'll do this, we'll do that, and, you know, we'll just work at that. Do you know what I mean? And if that was whether we scored a try or there's a try scored on us, do you know what I mean? It's just, and I suppose, you know, he could have said anything we'd all buy
Yeah.
into, because it's, do you know what I mean? But it wasn't a case where he was stepping back in it. That's for sure. So it was great to be able to play with him, and, you know, just even learn a few things off him, like, you know.
Do you think you might be able to get him to come on the podcast? Is that a possibility?
Jeez, I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
have a word. Have a word and see what
yeah, yeah,
happens.
yeah, 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 yeah.
We'll finish on last year. What I think is, you can tell me if it is or not. But one of the best things of your career is obviously going to the World Cup in 2019 in Japan to represent the United States. Can you tell us kind of when you found out that you were obviously going to be on that squad, or when you're actually going to be going to Japan, just how surreal that moment was?
Yeah, I suppose, like, without trying to, what's the word I'm looking for, make it, you know, you know, make it smaller, but, like, you know, kind of when you get invited to camp, it's like, you know, getting invited to camp is great, but it doesn't really mean anything. You still have a lot to prove, you know. And so just like getting invited to the Rugby World Cup training camp was, I mean, it, and I'm not trying to, you know, make this something smaller than what it is. Like, I worked very hard to get there, and the whole lot, like, but it's, you know, it's kind of fantastic, you know. But geez, the camp, the training camp wasn't easy. That's for sure. We're up in Colorado there, for up in altitude, and just
Mm.
training up in the Air Force Academy. But um, so then we with the Pacific Nations Cup, and then after that we kind of found out if we made the squad or not, like, you know. But it was oh Jesus, delighted, like, I mean, because, I mean, you know, it only comes, I suppose you could say it's something, be the equivalent of, like, the Olympics for an athlete, as in when I say, like, you know, track and field or something like that, you know, because, I mean, the highest thing is the Rugby World Cup. So I was absolutely delighted. I mean, you know, even when I first started off playing rugby, it was in 2000, in 2000, I don't say when I first started off, but when I was playing in the MLR in 2018, like, kind of Fitzy sat me down at the end of the season. He goes, well, you know, you've made the US team in 2018. He goes, the World Cup's next year. I was like, geez, that's wasn't even on my mind kind of thing, because it's just, I don't say you're just taking every day as it is and just kind of going for it. But after that, I was like, geez, I'd love to be unbelievable to go there, like, So,
Yeah.
but once there, the World Cup itself was, I mean, flying was a business class over to Japan was, something I wasn't used to. I mean, and I don't know if I ever will get used to, but that was it was fantastic. I suppose you could say the small things really like that, But Japan was unbelievable.
I was gonna
Lovely
ask my
spot.
next question. What's Japan like? What is it? Is it just mental?
As in, as a city, or as it around the world?
Yeah, so
Around
like you're
the
actually no, it's not
sorry, not the
just
city, country.
actual,
I mean,
just the country itself. Like being like, did you get much time
yeah.
to actually go around and experience it, or was it just there
Oh,
was
geez,
no
we did.
time?
Yeah, no, we had a bit of time to go around and kind of. I often try and whenever, no matter what kind of country we're in or city, wherever we are, I always like to try and go out and see something, just because you might be there again,
Yeah,
no matter where it is. So like with Japan, as in like the people were just, it was just, the people were so nice, so friendly, and even though they mightn't even have a word of English, they'll still help you somehow. I mean, I'm sure you've probably heard before, but the toilets were just there was some spectacular, like there's it's kind of like a built-in bidet, and the heated toilet seats, and they can play music and all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's just uh, I mean, I know it's something as simple as a toilet, but it's definitely a luxury. I mean, I don't know how they haven't taken off in the rest of the world, because these things
yeah,
are just unbelievable. Anyway, what else? I mean, the bullet trains too. I mean, it's just the whole lot. Like, I mean, I I loved it. I really loved it. I'd love to kind of go. I'd actually love to go back and just more of a as a holiday, um, rather than kind of a. I don't say, even on our day off, you still have to be kind of very conscious of, let's say, time, and to
yeah,
report back and that kind of crack. So I'd love to go back to Japan and suppose check it out a bit more.
yeah. It's, the people that I know have gone have always said that it's incredibly mental, but it's also incredible. So it's a place I've never been myself, but I definitely hope to get to someday. Um, he didn't get an easy group in the World Cup, that's for sure. England, France, Argentina, and Tonga. What was the attitude of the team going into that? Because obviously, the odds are against just going into that game, but is everyone pumped up, being like, let's, fucking win this game, or is it sort of like, what you tell me? What's the attitude going into those games like?
Oh, geez, I mean, it's win them, like, you know what I mean? I mean, and it's because somebody asked me that the other day as well, like, when you're playing something like England, like, are you out there to win, or are you out there just to kind of to get by? And I mean, the thing about it is, like, a year before that, then, like, we played, Scotland here in Houston.
Mm,
And I mean, if you went out with the attitude, are you going out to kind of get by, or are you going out to get win? Like, if you have the attitude, if it's not to win, you're not, you're just, you have no hope in hell, like, you know what I mean? So every game, like, I mean, it's just, we're out there to try and what's the word I'm looking for? Shock the world, really, I suppose. Do you know what I mean? I mean, look at the likes of even Japan when they beat South Africa the previous World Cup. Do you know what I mean?
mm.
And I mean, if you want, this World Cup when they beat Ireland, I mean, that was a shock. But I mean,
We don't talk about that, Paul, on this podcast.
sorry,
We don't
yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
That never happened.
yeah. but so you're out there just to, you're giving it everything. Do you know what I mean? There's definitely, you're giving it absolutely everything, and just, I mean, I suppose everything wasn't enough.
Yeah, exactly. And look, we speculate from the sidelines what the difference is between the teams like England and France and Argentina compared to a USA. But from someone who actually experienced it, what do you think separates, the top level, which is like England and France, say, and then say like a USA? Like where's the areas of the pitch that they just seem to separate themselves?
Jeez. Um, I suppose probably a lot of it boils down to, just pretty minutes played, I'd say. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like here with the MLRs, we only had you don't play that many games. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose from that aspect, it's quite easy on the body. But like the lads in the Premiership are playing. I don't say look at the standard of play, but look who you're playing against and stuff. I mean, if you're in the Premiership, you're playing from, you could say, arguably the best of the best. So you have the best players from all over the world playing in the English Premiership. While and probably a lot of the reason that is because of the dollar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, probably maybe just like the standard. I mean, again, rugby in America is very young. Do you know what I mean? I don't. Obviously they've been competing for years, but professional rugby in America is even, is very young. So it's, I mean, if it keeps progressing at the rate it is progressing, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you end up having the lads like on the Premiership to be coming over here, because I mean, it's just, I think it's a great spot.
Yeah, well, having players like Man Nanu going over obviously helps the
Yeah,
case for that. Do you know what I mean? And I'm sure more players will definitely come over because, as you said, the lifestyle is obviously nice and the cities are nice. So why not? So, 100%. You said in your documentary as well that when you were playing the English team that it was fairly easy to wind the English lads up.
geez, that slipped out, that did, huh?
I think we all wanted some examples of what was said. What's the techniques used to wind these boys up? Because we're an Irish podcast, so any chance we can get the one up on the English, we'll do it.
Yeah, geez, the World Cup's it's about a year ago, so I can't really remember what I said now. But no, listen, sure. We're inside the scrum, and I don't even remember who it was against. I mean, England had a phenomenal scrum. I mean, Christ, geez, that was just what I mean. It was, I mean, you see, it was tough for us too. Like when David Anu got he got injured 2 minutes in the first scrum. Do you know what I mean? First scrum, and you lose your loose head prop. Do you know what I mean? So then all of a sudden the bench has to go in. So then he has to play 80 minutes. I mean, there isn't many props playing 80 minutes, and I'm not saying that's the reason that the scrum didn't go well. I'm not trying to say that at all. But even when they had such a dominant scrum, you're still trying to get under their skin, do something just to you never know what might happen. Do you know what I mean? And to be honest, I don't know what I said. But you're just trying to, with whatever you can in any way, shape, or form, get the upper hand on them in some way. But yeah. I mean, listen, I wouldn't be taking any advice from me. You see what the scoreline was there, so maybe I don't know. Wouldn't take any advice from me in that one. Maybe talk to the South Africans, huh?
Was Joe Marler playing against you that day?
No, Joe had
okay.
he'd gone off at that stage.
I was going to say,
yeah.
I wouldn't like to wind him up because you never know what that lad will do in response.
Well, you kind of get the impression that he's a bit of a lunatic, and you wouldn't know what to expect from that lad now. But sure,
whatever you give, you're going to get it back twice as good. But still, I think when you're getting drawn into that group, you want to play the big boys, don't you? Is that the attitude? You want to get drawn against the big boys. You see it all the time in other sports where, you'll see a Shelbourne get drawn with a big team in a cup, and they're excited. And recently, their Connacht has gotten drawn with Racing 92 and Bristol, who are two European juggernauts at this stage. You want to play those games because you want to compete against the best. Was that what your attitude was going into that game? You're obviously going to get a couple of big teams, but is that the kind of mindset going into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's you kind of we had the game plan, and you just want to try and stick with the game plan because I mean, you trust the coaches and that kind of stuff, and sometimes maybe it's just what you put it. I mean, you make mistakes. Do you know what I mean? And I suppose the thing is, I mean, those scrums there, we might have a scrum, and next thing it might be our ball, and next thing England would take the so England would seal the ball in the scrum, and then sure, it's just so if England knock the ball on, so that'd be our scrum, and then they get the ball back in our scrum. Do you know what I mean? So it's just tough going, But yeah, I mean, listen, sure, you want to be playing with against the best because you want to be able to try and compare yourself against the best, and hopefully someday if you kind of become the best.
Exactly. We've talked about your past, obviously, Paul. What's the next couple of years hopefully have for you in store? What do you want to achieve the next couple of years, rugby wise, and obviously then maybe off the pitch wise?
Yeah, well, I suppose rugby wise, well, I'm staying in the MLR for a few years anyway. And in terms of off the pitch, not too sure.
Take up some refereeing, maybe. Go down that route.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that the thing is, I kind of like to try and. I do enjoy that, all right, but I'd like to have something I'd love to maybe. Yeah, am I thinking wrong? Really, I don't know. I'd love to be able to eventually have my own business of some sort,
Okay.
And maybe it's just a dream. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I might have watched a few too many episodes of Shark Tank or Dragons, as they call it back there,
Yeah.
But COVID, probably quarantine and that kind of crack does it to you. But I'd love to get into something, But and I'll definitely stay involved with the rugby, whether it is refereeing or, I think probably refereeing over coaching maybe. I don't know. Listen, I'm definitely not a great referee, so I can only get better. But sure, I'd like to be able to give back somehow, help the next generation kind of play a bit of rugby or even grow the game in America,
And is 2023 on your radar in regards to
Oh
the World
Jesus,
Cup?
yeah. I'll keep going until my body says no. So
2
at
World
least
Cups wouldn't be bad.
well, listen, that's still a long way out. Like, anything can happen. So I kind of take it, I don't say day by day, but because I know that's kind of cliche, but one step at a time. Do you know what I mean? So we'll see what happens.
I noticed your mate Tyg Leader. We've talked about it a few times. He's off kicking balls now, hoping to maybe get in the NFL. So have you thought about that? Maybe he might need someone to block for him. That could be you, Paul.
I actually haven't thought of it. I was talking to her a while back. I was like, geez, I said, how are you getting on? Or what's the crack there? Because it'd be absolutely fantastic. His story is fantastic.
Oh yeah, great.
It'd be great to have an Irish lad out there kicking in the NFL. But geez, yeah, no, I don't know. I wouldn't know too much about the American football now, to be honest. But sure, if they want me to block somebody, I'm sure I'll give it a shot. Like anything else, you know what I mean? If that's all they want me to do, but sure.
If they're willing to pay, yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Sure, I'd give it a lash for the crack anyway. Sure. Worst case scenario, it'd make a good story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, he's got the talent with the videos he's posting. He's absolutely.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
kicking the leather of the ball.
He's built them over from long way out. So, geez, I hope he does well, because I really hope so. It'd be fantastic. It should be fantastic even for, like, let's say Ireland, because you could put that as on the map. Do you know what I mean, as to be a kicker in the NFL? Because the thing is, like, and I don't know if Tyg mentioned it, but like when you're in Ireland, you're kind of brought up kicking, because you're either playing soccer or Gaelic football or even rugby. Do you know what I mean? So you're kind of kicking the ball. While over here, like, a lot of these lads wouldn't be brought up kicking, because, everything, or don't say everything in football, but, football is, for 99% of the time, it's, it's throwing a ball and catching the ball. You're not actually, American football I'm talking about, yeah.
It's
basketball,
hand
the same. Yeah. Baseball. So there isn't, soccer's obviously starting to, take off over here, but, kicking is, especially something like, any Irish dad, because they'd be brought up kind of kicking the ball, So, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how it goes. I'm sure, in fairness, I'm sure he'll get a contract, because I think he's a fantastic kicker. Like,
yeah, 100%. And then I've already tried to get on to him to come back on if he does, because I can get my first NFL player on the podcast. That obviously would be a milestone for us too. So
there you go. Yeah.
Hopefully. Paul, look, I'll not keep you any longer. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Again, thank you very much for giving us your time. And we wish you all the best, and stay safe over there, especially with the current election climate. So stay safe, and we'll hopefully speak again soon.
No bother. Yeah, listen, Stephen, thanks very much for having me. I'll talk to you again.
Man. See you again.